Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back once again, and for the very first time, to the Farts and Crap Show, where today, as per usual, it's your host Danjo here with part 21 of Stick Tips, my ongoing series about controllers and recommendations and all that stuff. And today on this one, we are going to be talking about a PS2 controller I still use, the Hyperkin Brave Warrior. And it's a bit of a mixed bag on this one. In case you guys are wondering about the TLDR on this particular controller, yeah, it's the best option for about 20 bucks. I would give it 6 out of 10. Not great, but for the price option, yeah, getting a new PS2 controller for $20 from a semi-reputable company, it's a pretty good deal. It's not what I would recommend. What I would actually recommend is roughly twice as expensive though, which would be the Brook Wingman PS2 converter. However, this goes from between $40 to $50. Sometimes it's usually 45. However, sometimes it is a few bucks off. Like right now at the time of recording, it's $40 on Amazon, and it is available through Amazon via Brook's official store. But yeah, that's not the device we're talking about today. However, the reason this one is worth twice as much is because it is compatible with like 100 plus controllers. So if something goes wrong with the controller, you're not limited to that controller. Hopefully, you can have multiples that are compatible with the device, and that sort of thing. And then that way you can, get a similarly priced controller, like around 20, 25, like it's compatible with tons of Switch controllers, like from 8BitDo, Hori, PDP, that sort of thing, where they have budget options that are much better than the Hyperkin Brave Warrior. However, this is still a decent option, especially if you're strapped for cash or you want a player 2 controller. If you want to get a couple for those like multi-tap games, and you're not just buying one, you're buying like 4, then that makes a lot more sense. Especially if you want to do like couch co-op with like, what's a good example? X-Men Legends 2 or Marvel Ultimate Alliance, those kind of games on the PS2 that have 4-player local co-op, that kind of thing. And if you're setting up like a retro game room kind of thing, for these, that would be 80 bucks. For Wingman PS2 converters, it'd be like 200. So for a budget option, yeah, it's really good. And yes, I have tried some of the knockoff, like Chinese imitation PS2 controllers. None of them are good. They are kind of tempting sometimes, because for 20 you can get like a pair of PS2 controllers. The quality is garbage, okay? At least Hyperkin, it's the lower end, but functionally it's still okay. And I'm gonna go through like the teardown and cleaning and stuff. This is the before picture. It was quite dirty. I do like the shell color. I don't like the weird diagonal cuts that they do. It's not ergonomic. I think they just went with like a style and were like, hey, that looks cool, and then just ran with it. In a couple of ways it does feel like a real PS2 controller, like the analog sticks are almost the same as a DualShock 2. Everything that should be pressure sensitive is. So all the face buttons, triangle, circle, square, and X or cross, depending on, if you actually do that. The shoulder buttons, L1, R1, L2, R2. Actually, I don't know about L2 and R2. L1 and R1 are definitely pressure sensitive. I can't remember if L2 and R2 are, but whatever. The pressure sensitive buttons on the DualShock 2 are the same on this controller, and they do work in the respective games like Ace Combat. I think Gran Turismo was another one. I did really like Gran Turismo 4 for the PS2. I don't have a copy anymore, but yeah, let's get to the teardown. So what you'll need basically is a fine point, what they call it, narrow neck, narrow point, whatever, Phillips head screwdriver. I went with a 2.0 size. As far as gauge go, I would go from anywhere from a 1.4 to a 3. I would say somewhere in there should work. I think I used a 3 at one point and it was fine. I grabbed a couple of prying tools and some needle nose pliers because those are helpful sometimes, especially if you need to unplug a ribbon cable or whatnot. You don't actually have to in the disassembly, cleaning, reassembly process of this controller, but I did have it on hand, as well as an extra toothbrush and some baking soda and peroxide toothpaste, because cleaning the conductive rubber membranes via incredibly hot water and like the brushing of the actual membrane portions, it does stiffen them up a little bit a lot of the times with these kind of controllers, especially from Hyperkin and a few other companies. The conductive rubber membranes just kind of get soft over time, so your button presses don't feel as significant. Sometimes if there's like some gunk in there, it'll actually interfere with the connection between the membranes and the PCB, the printed circuit board, therefore missed inputs and that sort of thing. So it's for feel, it's for functionality, and if you do this step of the process, just rinse very thoroughly, and do not dry with any kind of cloth. Just air dry if you opt for it, compressed air dry if you want. And of course for the general dusting and cleaning of it, yeah, just like duster, compressed air, that kind of thing, as you would for, like, let's say a keyboard or something. Same thing work here just fine. So this is the back of the controller, nothing really to speak of here. There were a total of 7 screws to undo here to get the shell off. I believe that might also include the middle one. Anyway, once you remove all the screws, get the backing off of it, see this very simple PCB with a ribbon cable around the back, and then of course the vibration motors on the left and right handle. All pretty standard stuff here. The shoulder buttons are very loose. I'm just like lightly tapping right now, and once you have it all together, it feels fine, I guess. It's just kind of loose, and like especially once you take the shell apart a little bit, yeah, they kind of just fell right out. So and this is the shell, of course, that I took off the back of it. I do like the color, the overall presentation. It does look good, but like you're not looking at the controller while you're using it, so like it just feels awkward in the hand, and that's part of the reason for the 6 out of 10. It's just, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like a quality product. And there's a few gripes and nitpicks I'm gonna get to here in a minute. Anyway, so once you flip over, unscrew the PCB and like flip over the analog sticks. That's what the ribbon cable is for. This is kind of what you're going to be looking at. As you can tell, the analog sticks are a little off kilter. That's the way the controller was, even when it was brand new. They didn't quite solder the potentiometers quite straight, and it feels weird, but functionally it's fine. And removing things a little bit further, we got the conductive rubber membranes, which I actually did like the cutouts for these ones. They are they have little like lips around them that kind of keep them in place with like the mold of the front shell and everything. So that part is nice. At least things won't be wiggling around down there. The weird like cross thing holding the D-pad mold and everything, I'm not a fan of that, or really how the face buttons like feel. But again, I think it's because some of these things are pressure sensitive, so they wanted to make sure that they aren't wiggling around, that they're very secure in where they're sitting, in order, you know, to have like any kind of accuracy, that sort of thing. And yeah, part of the problem with this, you may notice there's just a clear like strip on the that the face button membranes are sticking to. This is a thing they do in PlayStation controllers that I'm not a fan of at all, where it's just part of the ribbon cable essentially, where it's not a PCB, it's just like clear like plastic with like conductive parts on it. And I've never liked this in controllers, like ever. Like, give me a solid PCB for the membranes to communicate with. These kind of things, like it was barely being held in place. That part feels like it can slide around. And I think with this like dual, I don't know why they did it like this. It's kind of terrible. I think it was because that's kind of how the DualShock 2 and 3 controllers are. And I think maybe the 4, definitely the 2 and 3. I don't think there's any good reason for this, honestly. They could have gone with a double PCB setup, kind of like they do in the 8BitDo SN30 Pro USB. It's a fine way to do things, or even the SN30 Pro Plus. Like, that's a much better design. This, from a fundamental standpoint, is kind of a problem, in my opinion. And I think kind of contributes to the overall just not great feel of this controller. Like, again, functionally it's okay. And this is what I'm talking about. The D-pad and the little cross thing, it kind of holds the D-pad. It's an okay design, but the height on this thing is nuts. Like, this D-pad is way higher than it needs to be. Granted, for like a full press on any direction, you're almost touching like the edge of the shell, but still, like, there is a ton of travel that just doesn't need to be there. And it's not like the PCBs are any different. There's no reason it needs to be this high. It just feels like, granted, the little cross holder thing, it prevents you from pressing all 4 directions at once, but there is absolutely no reason there needs to be this much travel. And also, here, you guys can probably hear this. It squeaks. And it's just not great. It doesn't feel great. It feels like there's way too much action on each direction. And the diagonals are just kind of terrible because it's like this long cross thing without any... It's just bad, especially for if you need to do like, oh my goodness, if I had to play like Tekken or Street Fighter with this thing, no, this would not be okay. Especially if you're trying to do like, you know, Hadoukens and Shoryukens and all that. No, absolutely not. This is a terrible D-pad. and that's another point off. Like, that's just, it's bad. Anyway, this is when it was all gunky. That's after I cleaned it up, because yeah, there's also a pretty large gap in there just for like dust and various gunk to get down, and so it was nasty. I cleaned it up though. It looks like new. It's still a terrible design though. It's really bad. And these are the potentiometers for the analog sticks. It's I tried to look online for like what for these potentiometers. That's why I have like the shot where you can see, like, I think that's the name of them. I couldn't find anything online. Granted, there might be certain supply websites that like sell potentiometers or like controller parts or something like that I don't know about. But yeah, these are not very good potentiometers. They kind of suck. They were just kind of put on there crooked. It didn't really seem like they were soldered crooked. I think it's just a manufacturing thing. Like, one of the potentiometers was like mounted wrong. I don't know. Again, functionally, it's not a problem. They're just like visibly crooked, and it makes it so like tilting the analog stick one direction has more travel than the other direction. Like, left is further than pushing to the right. And actually kind of same on the right analog stick, it's kind of the same. It's not as pronounced, but it's still uneven and it bothers the crap out of me. Partially because I like analog sticks that are parallel, because when they feel the same, like parallel, what's the other word? Symmetrical. So when they're symmetrical and they are both straight, it's easier for me to use them in unison, if that makes sense. However, if one is mounted crooked and the other is a little less crooked, like, it just messes up the whole thing. So, and this was the problem when I was putting putting everything back together. They didn't do very well with the wire management here. So I kind of had to like twist it and like shove it under the PCB and then put the cable into the shell and then kind of like hold the stuff as I like did that little screw in the middle to like hopefully kind of keep it in place. But it's not a good solution, like, at all, in case that wasn't super obvious. And yeah, you may notice it's only on the right side where there's a screw in the middle, because once you put the back shell on, there's a screw parallel to that screw on the left side with like the pole. And I guess it looks more natural, but there's no reason for it. It's just kind of like, again, not a great design. And like, they had a bunch of extra solder on the PCB too that was like, why is this here? It's just kind of gross. And honestly, I don't have a soldering kit, so like, I wasn't gonna mess with any of that, because again, functionally, it's fine. It's just kind of gross, and like, especially for a controller with a transparent shell. Like, I feel like if you screw up the PCB, yeah, I can see it right now. I'm looking at the back of it and just like, it's kind of gross. And anyway, there's the finished clean controller, as restored as it's gonna get, restored to new, which was not very good. And yeah, again, it's really the best new option for 20 bucks, but the quality is kind of crap. But it is the best option. There aren't a lot of options. There's also the recent Retro Fighters did I think they called it the Defender PS2 controller. And from what I've heard online, it was okay. Apparently they also screwed up the analog sticks, but like the button quality and like the build and comfort, everything was good except the analog sticks, and that is such a shame. It's such a pet peeve of mine because so many controller companies do this where they cheap out on the analog sticks, so they cheap out on the potentiometers, and it became more of a common practice these past, like, I would say 5-10 years, something like that. And so that's kind of why we have all of these like analog, like stick drift is like such a common complaint these days, to where even people that aren't gamers have heard of stick drift and be like, I talked to somebody a while ago that like it has really never played a video game, and they're like, oh yeah, the Switch, isn't that like the system that everybody's like, the Nintendo, they didn't even say system, the Nintendo that everybody's mad at because the stick drift? And I was like, yeah, like what? And they're like, what is stick drift? And I was like, oh my goodness, how much time do you have? It was just, it's the fact that even non-gamers have heard of it, that's when you know it's bad. So anyway, but yeah, that's my final thing about the Hyperkin Brave Warrior. Okay for $20. I think the MSRP is actually $30. I would not pay that much. If you're thinking about picking one of these up and it's like 28, 25 to $30, just no. Just spend the extra 10 and get the Wingman PS2 converter. Like, that's this guy right here, okay? Just, if the difference is only $10, get that. But, you know, if it's 20, like, yeah, it's half the price. Like, especially if you're strapped, if you need something quick, or if you just need a backup controller, it's not the worst thing. But as these episodes always go, guys, it is time once again for some gameplay. And in case you guys didn't know by the music, this is Armored Core Nexus for the PS2, one of my favorite games of all time, definitely in my top 10. And this is like my cleared 100% file, so I'm just gonna pick. I've already picked out a mission, Defend Missile Outpost. This is running on original hardware, obviously, because I need a game. This controller is only for PS2, in case that wasn't super obvious. I think that goes without saying. So this is running on the PS2 Slim. And in case you guys are Armored Core fans like myself, this is rather tricky mission, so I'll just go over the build real quick with you guys, like just real quick. Assembly, going with the Queen Head, Cronus Core, Macaque Arms, Dingo 2 Legs, the Birdie, and everything's tuned. I don't want to get into all the tuning. The Monju FCS, the Kujaku generator, the Ananda radiator, the Funi extension. I think this is a hidden part, I think. Anyway, extra micro missiles, the Karura back unit, 9 micro missile launcher, the Siren 3 radar, the Shadow, sorry about that, rifle on the right, the gassed rifle on the left. I don't know why it says R gassed. R Shadow, R gassed. It's like a left, whatever. And that's pretty much it. Nothing in the hangars because I'm trying to keep the weight down and I'm already 113 away from max. So for optional parts, I'm just going with the shell and energy reduction ones, the stability, Generator condenser, the lock-on cancellation, missile lock-on time, and the size of the sight lock, and that's pretty much it. So, let's go to the mission. Which we got defend missile outpost, is that the one? I think that's what I said, right? Plus I wanted to show some of the some of my favorite tracks in this game, and this is definitely one of them. Without getting like spoilery. Because like some of the later missions have like really great music, really great moments. But I didn't want to go with anything like too late in the game. But yeah, overall guys, I don't like the way this controller feels in the hand. It's kind of trash. But, you know, functionally it's okay. Shit. Yeah, I screwed that up. Well, I usually like to keep these videos to half an hour, so I think we got time for one more attempt. It's a good setup. I just yeah. My credits don't really mean anything at this point in the game because I've already done anything. Again, this is like 100% clear file, so defend missile outpost, there we go. Let's give it one more. Yeah, the other thing too is like the buttons just, even after stiffening up the membranes, like they still just kind of feel squishy and gross. And like the L3 and R3 are really loud. I'm not even holding that up to the microphone. Like here, that's with just regular position, just like hand controller in the lap kind of thing. Not even trying to amplify that at all. So it's kind of strange. You just so much travel in the D-pad, the extra clicky L3 and R3, the squishy like face buttons and shoulder buttons, and just the overall like terrible ergonomics. It's just not comfortable.
Main system. Engaging combat.
The missile batteries are your primary defense target.
Just skip that real quick. Gotcha.
mission objective achieved. System switch to normal.
Yeah, FromSoft did they did a bang up job with this game. It's incredible, fantastic soundtrack. It's actually got a new campaign and like the remaster campaign, which is like it's freaking awesome. Plus like gallery. Anyway, I can't sing this game's praises enough. It's incredible. It's so good. If you've never played an Armored Core game, either this or Last Raven is the best one, really, to like start on. The older ones before Nexus were kind of. Anyway, this isn't an Armored Core retrospective. All right, I might do one of those someday. Just don't hold your breath. It's probably not happening anytime soon. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today, guys. Thank you very much for being here. Greatly appreciated. And of course, before we get going, a very special thank you going out to the current Farts and Craft Show members, which at the time of recording is Nabalis Draconis. But if you want to be incredibly awesome, support the show a bit more directly, and get in on those membership benefits, like Nabalis Draconis, check out the join button down below. Tier start at $3 a month. It's only 10 cents a day. Gets you into all the basic stuff. And until next time, guys, take care, and I hope you all have a beautiful day.